Before the first snap, before the crowd even roars, these players already own the field. They're the reason quarterbacks lose sleep and running backs hesitate to run. These are the men who made NFL history, not just with wins, but with fear. Want to know who made the list? Who delivered the hits that left the league in shock? Strap in, because we're about to reveal the 15 scariest players to ever set foot on the gridiron. And trust me, this is a lineup you won't forget. Legendary defenders. In the heart of the most feared defense of the 1970s stood Joe Greene, a true titan of the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line. As the leader of the famed Steel Curtain, Greene quickly became one of the most dominant defenders in NFL history. He was known not just for his brute strength, but for the aggression and football IQ he brought to every play. His ability to control the line of scrimmage was terrifying for any offensive line. Facing Joe Greene wasn't just a physical challenge, it was a mental battle too. He could blow through blockers with ease, sending quarterbacks into a panic. His very presence on the field forced defenses to rethink their game plans. Joe Greene's work ethic was unmatched, extending far beyond the field. He was the heartbeat of that legendary Steelers defense, pushing his teammates to raise their level of play. His impact was so profound that he could swing the momentum of entire games. Combining raw power with refined technique, Greene led the defense that held the Vikings to just 17 rushing yards in Super Bowl IX. For many, Joe Greene became the embodiment of defensive perfection, a nightmare for any opponent who lined up against him. Over the course of his career, Greene racked up impressive stats, but his influence went beyond the numbers. He was a true field general, orchestrating the defense with precision and inspiring those around him with relentless intensity. Greene wasn't just a football player, he was a natural-born leader who demanded the best from everyone on his team. His strength, paired with his leadership, made him an intimidating force that rattled even the most experienced offensive players. Even after his retirement, Joe Greene's legacy lives on. His approach to the game, blending brute force with football intelligence, has inspired generations of defenders. Greene wasn't just a big man. He was a giant in NFL history. To Steelers fans and beyond, Joe Greene will always be remembered as the heart of the Steel Curtain, a defensive juggernaut who left an indelible mark on the sport. His impact goes beyond individual accolades. He epitomized what it means to be a feared and respected defender. Lawrence Taylor didn't just play linebacker for the New York Giants, he redefined the position. Before he came along, linebackers were primarily seen as run stoppers. But Taylor brought a whole new dimension to the game with his ability to sack quarterbacks and completely alter the course of games. His explosive speed combined with overwhelming strength made it impossible to predict where he would strike next. Taylor played with a level of intensity unmatched by his peers, forcing opposing offenses to constantly adjust their schemes to deal with his relentless pressure. He was a true game wrecker, always one step ahead of the offense. Taylor's impact went far beyond his ability to take down quarterbacks. He was directly responsible for a fundamental shift in offensive protections, with teams investing more in left tackles to guard the quarterback's blind side. His ability to deliver bone-crushing hits was just part of his skill set. Taylor also had an incredible knack for reading plays and disrupting passes, making him a threat in every phase of the defensive game. His dominance on the field wasn't just physical, it was mental as well. One of the most iconic moments of his career came in 1985 during Monday Night Football when he delivered a devastating hit that ended Joe Theismann's career. That hit became the symbol of Taylor's destructive power and cemented his reputation as one of the most feared players in NFL history. But Taylor's career wasn't defined by a single moment. He consistently ranked as one of the most impactful players on the field throughout his entire career. His physical presence and aggressive mindset forced opposing teams to always have a plan to neutralize him though that plan rarely worked. Taylor was a 10-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and one of the few defenders to ever win the NFL MVP award. His individual accolades are impressive, but Taylor's real legacy is in how he changed the game. He raised the bar for what was expected of linebackers and proved that a defender could be just as influential as any offensive superstar. Lawrence Taylor wasn't just a linebacker. He was one of the greatest players in NFL history, who struck fear into anyone who dared to line up against him. Dick Butkus, the legendary Chicago Bears linebacker, wasn't just a player, he was a wrecking ball on the field. Known for his nearly animalistic aggression, Butkus stood out as one of the most feared players of his generation. He approached every game with a ferocious intensity, playing with a controlled rage that drove him to be relentless against his opponents. His physical presence and unforgiving mindset made him the nightmare of any running back daring enough to run up the middle. Butkus didn't just aim to tackle, he aimed to destroy his opponent and leave them feeling the impact of the collision long after the whistle blew. What set Butkus apart from other linebackers was his mindset. He didn't see football as just a game, but as a battle where only the strongest would survive. Butkus used anger as fuel, creating reasons to hate his opponents and channeling that emotion into his performance. He famously said that if anyone on the opposing team was laughing, he took it as a personal insult. This mental state put him in a different league, where fear and respect blended in the minds of his opponents. Every time he stepped onto the field, his adversaries knew they were facing more than just a football player. Butkus led the NFL in tackles for 8 straight seasons, a feat that showcases both his consistency and his ability to be everywhere on the field at once. He wasn't just an aggressive linebacker, he was a master at making the perfect tackle. His instincts for the game, combined with his physicality, made him a true force of nature. He attacked his opponents with lethal precision, ensuring that any player crossing his path wouldn't approach the Bears the same way again. To Butkus, football wasn't just a physical competition. It was a mental war that he was always willing to win. Butkus' legacy as one of the greatest linebackers in NFL history is undeniable. To many, he embodied what it meant to be a relentless defender, a player who not only played with skill, but with heart and soul. Dick Butkus redefined the linebacker position, creating a standard that few could match. His name is synonymous with fear and respect, and his influence lives on in the competitive spirit of many defenders who strive to replicate his indomitable mindset and thirst for destruction on the field. Jack Lambert, the feared Steelers linebacker, was known for both his skill and his intimidating appearance. Missing his front teeth, Lambert looked like a warrior straight out of a gladiator arena. But it wasn't just his looks that struck fear. His relentless, brutal style of play made him one of the most feared players of his era. Playing as part of the legendary Steel Curtain defense, Lambert was the heartbeat of the Steelers' defense, and his intensity was unmatched. He didn't play just to win, he played to dominate his opponents and make sure they knew who was in charge. One defining moment in his career came during Super Bowl X, when Lambert fiercely defended his kicker, Roy Gerela, after a taunt from Cowboys safety Cliff Harris. Lambert didn't hesitate to throw Harris to the ground, sending a clear message that the Steelers wouldn't tolerate any disrespect. That moment encapsulates who Jack Lambert was, a player who would fight for his teammates and protect the honor of his team at all costs. He was always in the thick of the action, leading by example and intensity, making sure his opponents thought twice before approaching him. But Lambert wasn't just about brute strength. He was incredibly smart on the field, with an impressive ability to read the opposing offense and position himself for interceptions or crucial tackles. His dedication to the game and commitment to excellence made him one of the most complete defenders of his generation. Lambert was the kind of player who was always where the team needed him most, and that made him even more dangerous. He didn't just play the game, he controlled it, dictating the pace and intensity with which the Steelers' defense moved. Lambert's impact goes far beyond his impressive stats or Super Bowl titles. He was the symbol of an era of football where defense was an art of intimidation and brute force. His leadership and fierce mentality inspired generations of linebackers who sought to replicate his ability to dominate the field and instill fear in his opponents. For Lambert, football was a battle, and he was always prepared to fight until the last minute. His presence on the field didn't just change the game, it altered the mindset of everyone around him, creating a legacy that echoes through the NFL to this day. Deacon Jones, known as the Secretary of Defense, was one of the greatest pass rushers in NFL history. Playing for the Los Angeles Rams in the 1960s, Jones redefined what it meant to be a defender who pressures the quarterback. He is widely credited as the inventor of the term sack, a stat that wasn't officially tracked for most of his career, but has become synonymous with his style of play. His infamous head slap a move where he would strike offensive linemen's heads to disorient them was one of his deadliest tactics. This technique, later banned by the NFL, was a testament to the ferocity with which Jones played the game. Jones wasn't just about physicality, though he was incredibly smart on the field. His ability to read plays and anticipate the quarterback's movements made him a constant threat. He could pressure the quarterback on nearly every down, forcing hurried throws, sacks, and even turnovers. It was almost impossible to block Jones with just one lineman, and often he would face double or even triple teams, yet still find ways to break through the offensive line. His dominance on the field wasn't just about his physical power, but his mental mastery of the game. Throughout his career, Deacon Jones was a revolutionary figure. He didn't just play the game differently, he changed the game. His performances led to changes in the NFL's rules, especially regarding how defenders could engage with offensive linemen. Moreover, his presence on the field completely altered the offensive game plans of opposing teams. They knew that if they didn't neutralize Jones, it was only a matter of time before he wreaked havoc. He didn't just sack quarterbacks, he demoralized entire teams with his aggression and pinpoint accuracy. Even after his retirement, Deacon Jones' impact continues to be felt. He is remembered as one of the greatest defenders of all time, a player who brought not only brutality to the game, but also a strategic mind that revolutionized the pass rusher position. To him, football was more than just a sport, it was a battlefield where he was always a step ahead of his opponents. His legacy lives on in the generations of players who try to emulate his ferocity and intelligence on the field, and his name is synonymous with absolute domination. Dominating the secondary. Jack Tatum was a name that sent chills down the spine of any wide receiver or running back who dared to venture into the secondary. Nicknamed the Assassin, Tatum earned his reputation with bone-crunching hits and a level of ferocity that went beyond the norm. As a safety for the Oakland Raiders, he played with an intensity that often blurred the line between legal football hits and outright violence. His infamous hit on Patriots wide receiver Darryl Stingley during a 1978 preseason game is the play that cemented Tatum's terrifying legacy. The collision left Stingley paralyzed from the chest down, marking one of the most tragic moments in NFL history. While the Stingley hit was widely criticized, it perfectly encapsulated Tatum's mentality on the field. His job was to instill fear in anyone who crossed into his territory. He made no apologies for the way he played the game, and though many questioned his approach, Tatum never wavered from his mindset that football was a violent sport meant for violent players. His idea of a good hit, as he once put it, was when the victim wakes up on the sideline with train whistles blowing in his head. That approach made Tatum a living nightmare for anyone lining up against him. He played with a brutality that was admired by some, feared by many, and condemned by others. Beyond the controversy, Jack Tatum was also a highly effective defender. He was a key part of the Raiders' secondary, helping the team establish its reputation as one of the most feared defenses of the era. He had a knack for making game-changing plays, whether it was delivering a huge hit to break up a pass or coming in clutch with an interception. Tatum's physicality was his calling card, but his football intelligence often got overlooked. He had a great sense of timing and positioning, allowing him to be in the right place at the right time to make big plays. Tatum's legacy in the NFL is complex. He was a trailblazer in a sense, bringing a new level of aggression to the safety position. But his career is also remembered for the ethical debates surrounding the violence of the game and the consequences of such hits. While he didn't apologize for how he played, Tatum's career forces us to reflect on the balance between hard-hitting football and player safety. Regardless of where one stands on that issue, one thing is certain. Jack Tatum made an indelible mark on the game, and his presence in the secondary was enough to make receivers think twice before running routes over the middle. If you were a receiver going across the middle and saw Ronnie Lott lurking in the secondary, you were in for a world of hurt. Lott, a Hall of Fame safety for the San Francisco 49ers, was known for delivering hits that could rattle bones and break spirits. He played with a level of physicality and aggression that few could match, making him one of the most feared players of his era. Lott was a rare breed. He combined devastating hitting ability with the intelligence to read offenses like a book, allowing him to make key plays at crucial moments. He wasn't just a thumper, he was a cerebral assassin on the field. One of the defining moments of Lott's toughness came in 1986 when he famously had the tip of his pinky finger amputated rather than miss a playoff game. That decision exemplified Lott's warrior mentality and his commitment to his team. His teammates viewed him as a leader who would go to war with them no matter the cost. It wasn't just about making the big hit for Lott. It was about making the play that would shift the momentum of the game. He had an uncanny ability to come up with interceptions, fumble recoveries, and game-saving tackles in the most crucial moments. Lott's career wasn't just about toughness and hard hits. He was also a key figure in the 49ers dynasty that dominated the NFL throughout the 1980s. With Lott anchoring the defense, the 49ers won 4 Super Bowls, and his ability to punish receivers and force turnovers was a huge part of their success. Lott could cover ground like few others, and his versatility allowed him to play both quarterback and safety at an elite level. He was just as effective in coverage as he was in run support, making him a nightmare for opposing offenses. Ronnie Lott's name is synonymous with toughness, but his legacy goes beyond the hits. He was a complete player who set a new standard for safeties in the NFL. His leadership on and off the field, combined with his ferocious play, earned him a place among the greatest defensive players in NFL history. For receivers who had the misfortune of playing against him, Lott was a force to be reckoned with, the kind of player who could single-handedly change the outcome of a game with one well-timed hit or interception. Ray Lewis didn't just play football, he dominated it with a presence that bordered on mythic. As the face of the Baltimore Ravens defense for 17 seasons, Lewis was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year and the heart and soul of a Ravens team that became synonymous with hard-nosed, smash-mouth football. From the moment he stepped onto the field, Lewis radiated intensity. His pre-game ritual, which included an iconic dance as he emerged from the tunnel, became a symbol of the terror he would unleash on the opposing offense. But it wasn't just showmanship when the game began. Lewis backed up the hype with bone-jarring hits and relentless pursuit. Lewis wasn't just a hitter, though. He had an unparalleled football IQ that allowed him to diagnose plays before they happened. He was constantly in the right place at the right time, making tackles, intercepting passes, and forcing fumbles. What set Lewis apart wasn't just his physical dominance. It was his leadership and the emotional energy he injected into his team. His teammates fed off his intensity, and opposing teams had to account for him on every single play. He was the heartbeat of a defense that consistently ranked among the league's best. One of the most famous plays of Lewis's career came in Super Bowl 35, where he led a Ravens defense that allowed only 3 points to the New York Giants. His performance earned him Super Bowl MVP honors, and his dominance on that stage solidified his reputation as one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history. Lewis was the driving force behind one of the most feared defenses the league had ever seen, and his ability to inspire those around him made him a once-in-a-generation leader. Ray Lewis's legacy is defined by his passion, intensity, and leadership. He wasn't just a player, he was a motivator, a mentor, and a symbol of what it meant to be a dominant force in the NFL. His ability to lift his team with his energy and back it up with elite play is what makes him one of the most iconic figures in the sport. Lewis's hits were punishing, but it was his mind and his leadership that made him truly special. In the eyes of many, Ray Lewis was the definition of a defensive game changer. If Ray Lewis was the heart of the Ravens' defense, Ed Reed was the brain. Playing safety with the instincts of a seasoned detective, Reed was one of the smartest players to ever grace the NFL field. He could read a quarterback's eyes like few others, positioning himself perfectly to pick off passes and then turn those interceptions into game-breaking touchdowns. Reed wasn't just a safety, he was a playmaker, always looking for opportunities to create turnovers and change the momentum of a game. In a career that spanned over a decade, Reed amassed 64 interceptions and became the gold standard for free safeties in the NFL. What made Reed so dangerous was his ability to take those interceptions and turn them into points. He holds the NFL record for the longest interception return, a 108-yard return for a touchdown against the Eagles, and consistently punished teams that underestimated his range and ball-hawking ability. Reed's ability to turn defense into offense made him one of the most feared players in the league. Opposing quarterbacks knew that one wrong move could lead to Reed taking the ball the other way for 6 points. But Reed wasn't just a ball hawk. He was also a physical player who wasn't afraid to come up and deliver a big hit in run support. His versatility made him invaluable to the Ravens' defense, and his football IQ was off the charts. Reed would often study film for hours, picking up on the smallest tendencies of opposing quarterbacks and offenses. His preparation allowed him to anticipate plays before they unfolded, making him a step ahead of the offense on nearly every snap. Reed's football intelligence and natural instincts made him a weapon that could completely neutralize the opposing team's passing attack. Ed Reed's legacy is one of intelligence, playmaking, and dominance. He wasn't just a great safety, he was a game changer who could turn the tide of a game with a single play. His ability to read quarterbacks and take calculated risks made him one of the most feared defenders in NFL history. Whether he was intercepting a pass or delivering a hard hit, Reed always seemed to be in the right place at the right time, making life miserable for offenses across the league. Dick Night Train Lane wasn't supposed to be a football star. He played just one season of junior college football before serving 4 years in the U.S. Army. But after being discharged, Lane took a shot in the dark, stopping by the Los Angeles Rams office to ask for a tryout as a receiver. What happened next was the stuff of legends. The Rams, blown away by his raw athletic ability, gave him a spot on the team, but not as a receiver. Instead, Lane found his true calling as a defensive back, where he would go on to become one of the most feared and respected players in NFL history. Night Train Lane didn't just play cornerback, he revolutionized the position. Known for his aggressive and physical style, Lane was notorious for his brutal tackling. His signature move, the Night Train necktie, involved wrapping his arms around an opponent's head or neck and yanking them down, a move so violent it eventually led to the NFL changing the rules to ban such tackles. Lane played with an edge that was unmatched in his era, and offenses knew that getting tackled by Night Train wasn't just about getting brought to the ground, it was about feeling the full force of his wrath. But Lane wasn't just a hard hitter. He was also an incredible ball hawk with unmatched instincts for the game. In his rookie season, he set an NFL record with 14 interceptions in just 12 games a record that still stands to this day. His ability to read quarterbacks and jump routes made him a constant threat in the secondary. Offenses quickly learned that throwing in Lane's direction was a gamble they usually couldn't afford to take. Night Train Lane's combination of physicality, intelligence, and playmaking ability made him one of the most complete defensive backs the NFL had ever seen. His legacy is one of toughness and dominance, and his style of play set the standard for generations of defensive backs who followed. Lane wasn't just a football player, he was a trailblazer, a game changer who redefined what it meant to be a cornerback in the NFL. His aggressive approach to the game changed the way defenses played, and his impact on the sport remains undeniable. Brute force on offense. Jim Brown wasn't just a running back, he was a force of nature. At 6 feet 2 inches and 232 pounds, Brown brought a blend of size, speed, and strength that had never been seen before in the NFL. He dominated defenders with a combination of brute force and agility that left them grasping at air or lying flat on the turf. Brown's ability to plow through defenders like they were nothing made him an unstoppable force in the Cleveland Browns backfield. He didn't just run around defenders, he ran through them. And by the time his career was over, he had redefined what it meant to be a running back in the NFL. Brown's impact on the game went beyond his physical prowess. He had an unmatched football IQ and a vision for the field that allowed him to find holes that others simply couldn't see. Defenses would stack the box, dedicating multiple players to try and stop him, but it rarely worked. Brown led the NFL in rushing 8 out of his 9 seasons, setting records for rushing yards and touchdowns that stood for decades. What made Brown even more terrifying for defenders was his relentless consistency. He didn't take plays off, and every time he touched the ball, he was a threat to take it to the house. One of Brown's defining traits was his refusal to be tackled easily. He famously told his teammates that if a defender was going to bring him down, they have to remember how much it hurt. His powerful running style punished defenders, leaving them battered and bruised by the end of the game. And yet, despite the physical toll he imposed on others, Brown himself rarely missed games due to injury. His durability and toughness were as legendary as his ability to break tackles, and it's no surprise that he set the NFL's all-time rushing record with 12,312 yards before stepping away from the game. At the height of his career, Jim Brown's legacy isn't just about numbers, it's about the way he changed the game forever. He was more than just a great player. He was a symbol of what was possible when skill, strength, and intelligence combined on the football field. His influence can be seen in every powerful, bruising running back that came after him. To this day, Brown remains the gold standard for what a dominant back looks like, and his impact on the NFL is still felt, both in terms of the records he set and the fear he instilled in every defender who had to face him. Earl Campbell was built like a freight train, compact, powerful, and virtually impossible to bring down. Standing at 5 feet 11 inches and weighing 244 pounds, Campbell's thick, tree trunk-like legs powered him through would-be tacklers with a combination of speed and raw strength that made him one of the most feared running backs of all time. His running style was punishing, and defenders often joked that facing him meant they'd be soaking in a tub of Epsom salts for days after. Campbell didn't just run to pick up yards, he ran to punish, and his brand of football left a trail of battered defenders in its wake. One of Campbell's most iconic moments came during a game against the Los Angeles Rams in 1978, his rookie season. In one play, he collided with All-Pro linebacker Isaiah Robertson in a head-on clash that left Robertson flat on his back. Campbell then proceeded to tear through multiple defenders, dragging them along as he surged forward for extra yards. It was a play that defined his career, a perfect snapshot of his ability to overpower defenders with sheer force while also showing off his underrated speed and agility. But Campbell wasn't just about brute force. He had a rare combination of power and explosiveness that allow him to break away for big runs. His 4.6-second 40-yard dash time was faster than most backs his size, and once he got past the first line of defense, he was nearly impossible to catch. That's what made Campbell so special. He could bulldoze through the middle of the field, but if he found open space, he could take it all the way to the end zone. His powerful running style earned him MVP honors in 1979 and solidified his reputation as one of the most dominant backs of his era. Despite the toll his punishing running style took on his body, Campbell rarely missed games due to injury. His toughness was legendary, and he carried the Houston Oilers offense on his back for years. By the time he retired, Campbell had rushed for over 9,400 yards and scored 74 touchdowns, earning his place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Earl Campbell didn't just play football, he ran over it, leaving a legacy of broken tackles and broken spirits that continues to influence the way the game is played today. Reggie White, known as the Minister of Defense, was not just a dominant defensive end, he was a force of nature who left defensive linemen and quarterbacks alike trembling. Standing 6 feet 5 inches and weighing 291 pounds, White combined raw power with incredible speed and technique, making him one of the most feared pass rushers in NFL history. White was the total package. He could bull rush a 300-pound offensive tackle, knocking them off balance with ease, or finesse his way around blockers with a series of hand moves that left opponents grasping at thin air. No matter what strategy offenses used to try to contain him, White always found a way to break through. One of White's signature moves was the hump move, where he would lift an offensive lineman with one arm and toss them aside like a rag doll. It was a move that showcased not just his strength, but his ability to read and manipulate the positioning of offensive linemen. White's sack numbers speak for themselves. He retired as the NFL's all-time leader in sacks with 198, a record that stood for years. But it wasn't just about the stats for White. He had a knack for making game-changing plays when it mattered most. Whether it was a strip sack, a crucial third down stop, or simply collapsing the pocket, White was always in the thick of the action. White's career spanned 15 seasons, with his most dominant years coming with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. He was a consistent presence on the All-Pro team and a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. But perhaps his crowning achievement came in Super Bowl 31, when he recorded 3 sacks, helping the Packers win their first title in nearly 3 decades. White's ability to take over games made him the cornerstone of any defense he played on, and his leadership on and off the field was just as important as his physical dominance. Reggie White's legacy isn't just about the sacks or the titles, it's about the way he changed the game for defensive ends. He set a new standard for what a dominant pass rusher should look like, combining speed, strength, and technique in a way that has inspired countless players to follow in his footsteps. The Minister of Defense wasn't just a nickname, it was a fitting description of a man who took control of every game he played in, enforcing his will on anyone who stood in his way. J.J. Watt was a one-man wrecking crew for most of his career with the Houston Texans, and few players have dominated the line of scrimmage like him. Standing 6 feet 5 inches and weighing 288 pounds, Watt was a physical specimen, combining size, power, and athleticism in a way that made him almost impossible to block. Whether he was taking down quarterbacks, batting down passes at the line, or disrupting run plays, Watt had a knack for making game-changing plays. His impact wasn't just in the stat sheets, his presence alone forced offenses to game plan specifically around him. And even then, it often wasn't enough. One of Watt's most unique traits was his ability to bat down passes at the line of scrimmage. He became so adept at timing his jumps that he earned the nickname J.J. SWAT. In one season alone, he recorded 16 passes defended, a number more common for defensive backs than linemen. But Watt wasn't just a pass defender, he was one of the most relentless pass rushers the game has ever seen. He racked up over 100 sacks during his career, and his ability to collapse the pocket made him a nightmare for quarterbacks. Watt was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and at his peak, he was virtually unblockable. Watt's dominance wasn't limited to pass rushing. He was equally effective against the run, using his strength and quickness to shed blockers and make tackles in the backfield. He had a motor that never stopped, playing every down with the same intensity, whether it was the first quarter or the final drive of a game. Watt also had an uncanny ability to raise his game in critical moments. He wasn't just making plays, he was making plays that mattered, ones that could swing the outcome of a game. Though injuries plagued the latter part of his career, Watt's legacy as one of the most dominant defensive players in NFL history is secure. His impact on the game, both as a pass rusher and as a run defender, changed how offenses approached blocking schemes. Watt wasn't just a defensive end, he was a game changer. A player who could take over a game single-handedly and disrupt everything the opposing offense was trying to do. J.J. Watt redefined what it meant to be a dominant defensive lineman, and his influence on the game will be felt for years to come. James Harrison's path to NFL stardom was anything but conventional, but once he got his shot, he made sure no one would forget him. Standing only 6 feet tall, Harrison didn't have the prototypical size for a linebacker, but what he lacked in height, he more than made up for with power, intensity, and relentless drive. He spent the early part of his career bouncing between practice squads before finally getting his chance with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Once he did, Harrison quickly became known as one of the most feared linebackers in the league. He wasn't just a great player, he was a punishing force that left a trail of battered opponents in his wake. Harrison's breakout moment came during Super Bowl 43, where he made one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. With the Arizona Cardinals driving late in the first half, Harrison intercepted Kurt Warner at the goal line and rumbled 100 yards for a touchdown, the longest play in Super Bowl history. That play encapsulated everything that made Harrison great: his toughness, his instinct for the game, and his ability to come through in the clutch. Harrison wasn't just a bruiser, he had a football IQ that allowed him to read plays and anticipate the action. Harrison's strength was legendary, and his workouts became the stuff of legend. Videos of him doing 1,800-pound sled pushes and 315-pound reverse lunges went viral, showcasing the sheer power that allowed him to dominate offensive linemen and ball carriers alike. His bull rush was nearly impossible to stop, and when he hit a player, they stayed hit. Harrison was the 2008 Defensive Player of the Year and a 5-time Pro Bowler. But it wasn't just the accolades that made him feared, it was the knowledge that, on any given play, he could change the course of the game with one bone-rattling hit. James Harrison's career was defined by his toughness and his refusal to give up. He wasn't supposed to be an NFL star, but he willed his way to the top. His tenacity and relentless work ethic made him one of the most feared linebackers in the history of the game. Whether he was sacking quarterbacks, intercepting passes, or delivering devastating hits, Harrison left an indelible mark on the NFL. His career is a testament to what's possible when grit and determination meet raw talent, and his legacy as one of the league's scariest defenders is firmly cemented. These 15 legends didn't just play football, they redefined it. Their hits, their moves, their very presence on the field left a mark that still echoes in every tackle, every run, and every pass in today's game. These are the players who made Sundays a battlefield and left their opponents and the fans forever changed. And as we look at the NFL today, the game they shaped continues to evolve. Who will be the next to step up and take their place in history? Can anyone match the sheer fear that these icons instilled in their opponents? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, these 15 players will forever be the standard by which we judge the future greats. If you loved seeing these moments of pure football dominance, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your most unforgettable NFL moment. Let's keep this conversation going. Who do you think is the scariest player in NFL history?